Welcome to Ventrilicity. I'm Veluxe. This show is brought to you by Senchigami, and we're here for all your Valorant news. Now let's get this started. First things first, we need to touch on what happened in the first NA main event for Challengers. Last week, we talked about some of the teams that we hadn't seen before coming into the scene, as well as some good old classics that were still killing Radiance. So how did it all shake down? Well, we'll have to talk about the fact that the Kansas City Pioneers, the new additions to the high tier of NA, took home a full match against, version 1. That's right, the Kansas City Pioneers may have won only one match during the Challengers main event, but it was an important one, the lower bracket round 1 match. Critically, this means version 1 needs to come into the top 4 in the next main event just to punch their ticket to Berlin. Honestly, we expected a shakeup here at Ventrilicity, but we at least had our money on version 1 making it to the Challengers playoffs. It could still happen, but losing both matches in a row on main event 1 was not the way to start. Following the current Kings of NA, Sentinels won the overall main event and punched their ticket to the Challengers playoffs, but it did come at a cost. Following the current Kings of NA, Sentinels, they did win the overall main event and punch their ticket to the Challengers playoffs, but it did come at a cost. Team Exet took the first match off Sentinels in a long time. Sentinels didn't even lose a match during Masters, so hey, good job out there, Exet. Of course, we did say Sentinels won the event, which means that they slayed their way through the lower bracket and ended up taking down Exet in the finals, killing the young Kansas City Pioneers on the way. GG boys. This also means that the current score between the two top teams from the first main event is 1-1. We're looking forward to seeing how that shakes out in the playoffs. Will we get an interesting new rivalry on our hands? Or are we gonna see Sentinels prove that the loss was a fluke? We're gonna have to wait till August to find out. For the other teams that have locked in their spot in the playoffs, we have Team Exet, 100 Thieves, and Team Envy rounding out the playoff slots with Sentinels. The rest of the teams in this event need to prove themselves, or they're gonna miss their flight to Berlin. Whether we'll see more changes within the world of Valorant before Masters Berlin, we're just gonna have to wait and see. Though here at Senchigami, we're really hoping that someone from NA steals the top spots from version 1 or Sentinels, considering how dominant NA was during the first event. Now look, it's gonna be a while before we're all caught up with who is going to be headed to Masters Berlin, seeing as there's so many separate events going on to decide on the rosters. But if the other events are half as interesting as these results from just these two, then we're along for a big ride, guys. Honestly, we just want to see something from Kansas City because everyone does love an underdog story. Want to know what else everyone loves? Smooth transitions into ad spots. Ventrilicity and all the content on the Senchigami channel is brought to you by viewers and listeners like you who support us over on Senchigami.com. Are you a fan of people rising to chase their goals, people achieving their dreams? Of course you are. Senchigami is a community focused on just that. Between independent content creators and supporters, we're changing the attitude around content creation one project at a time. So come visit us on our Discord server and ask us about what we do. Looking across the pond, there were some standouts in Europe this week with the finalizing of their Week 1 main event. Now keep in mind their format for Europe is a little different than NA. We have a video that covers the format of Challengers in the description. And Riot has a useful site for getting out all this information. You can check that also in the description. Go ahead, you can check it out. I can wait. Welcome back. All caught up on how formats work? Perfect. Here's one of the biggest things coming out of Europe is G2. In case you don't remember, or you were taking a break when Jackson was hosting the show. Love you, Jackson. G2 was one of the first high-level Valorant teams that made a big shakeup on the roster right after Masters Reykjavik, adding Nuki, Avova, and Coldmeta to their roster, aka it's essentially an entirely different team from what they were the last time around. How did this turn out for them? Well, they're headed to Challengers playoffs after knocking previous Masters Reykjavik finalist Team Fnatic out of the lower bracket, so they were doing pretty well, I'd say. G2 didn't end up taking the entire event home though. That honor went to Ascend, but remember how we said it wasn't a big deal that version 1 was going to have to prove themselves in the next event? Well, we're seeing EU rules are different, which you know from now watching the other video, there's no chance for redemption for the EU teams. EMEA, the larger Europe circuit that actually sends their teams to Masters, won't be sending either Team Liquid or Team Fnatic. the representatives of Master Reykjavik, because they both got knocked out this week. Well then, that's fantastic news for everyone other than Team Liquid and Team Fnatic, because that means Masters Berlin just can't end up as being Reykjavik number 2. We've already guaranteed that a good amount of the top teams from the previous event, including the finalists, won't be going. Oh boy. Speaking of being along for a whole ride, you've made it. This is the end of the episode for Ventrilicity. Do you know what that means? It also means it's time for me to remind you that this show is part of the Senshigami network, supporting streamers like myself, writers like Jackson, and a ton of content creators from all over the internet who love to do what they do and strive to be better at it. But not to freak anyone out, we are going to have some big announcements coming for Senshigami, so stay tuned. Have a great day, everyone. Make sure to check your corners, and I'll see you next week. Bye! Masters Reykjavik, adding, how do you say those names? Avova, Nuki, and Cold Menta? What?